Hello everyone, I am the Desert Gardener, and today we have my long-awaited update to my Blossom End Rot video. So I've got my tea, let's get started. So in my first video, I went into a lot of the technical details of Blossom End Rot, which is also called abiotic stress. So if you want to see that video, I'll link to it down below. But in this one, I'm going to try to make things a bit more simple. I've got 3 lists that I've compiled. The first list is 6 Blossom End Rot myths. These are things that you'll hear on the internet that are supposed to fix Blossom End Rot that absolutely do not work. The second is a very short list of things that you may be doing right now that could be making the problem worse. And the last one are 9 do's. Things that you should start doing right away to help prevent Blossom End Rot in the future. Now I say prevent because there's really no way to fix it once it already starts happening. So once you start seeing that Blossom End Rot on your tomatoes or your peppers, there's really nothing that can be done about that. Just cut it off, throw it away, and continue on. So let's start out with that first 6 myths. And the first one is adding calcium. You will always hear people on the internet telling you to add calcium to your soil to prevent Blossom End Rot. Now, as I spoke about in the other video, Blossom End Rot is not caused by a calcium deficiency. It's caused by a lack of calcium movement brought on by stress to the plant. So adding calcium to the soil will do absolutely nothing. So the next one, you'll often hear people talk about adding eggshells to the soil. Now this is pretty much the same thing. Eggshells are calcium carbonate. People think that adding calcium to the soil is going to help, so they suggest eggshells. Problem here, not only is it not a calcium deficiency, but eggshells take a long time to break down in the soil, anywhere from 3 months to a couple of years. So if it was a deficiency in calcium, your plants would be long dead and gone before they could absorb the eggshells anyway. So maybe it would help next year's plants, but it's not going to do anything for this year's plants. So that's not going to help. The next one is putting Tums, the little tablets, in the planting hole. This is kind of the same thing. Tums have a lot of calcium in it, so they think that's going to help. It absolutely won't. The next one is a product called CalMag Plus. Now this is a liquid calcium, so the plants will be able to absorb it much quicker, but as I keep saying, it's not a calcium deficiency. All the calcium in the world will not stop Blossom End Rot. So the next one is actually a product that's specifically designed to stop Blossom End Rot. It's called Rot Stop, and it's a spray that you spray on the leaves and on the fruit, and this is supposed to help stop Blossom End Rot as well. Absolutely will not. It's mostly calcium, and to make matters worse, tomato and pepper plants cannot absorb calcium through their leaves or through their fruit. So spraying it on their leaves will do absolutely nothing. It's a complete waste of time and money. It's just marketing hype. And the last one is Epsom salts. Now a lot of people will recommend Epsom salts for Blossom End Rot and other things. It won't help at all. In fact, overuse of Epsom salts can actually cause Blossom End Rot. So you really need to use Epsom salts sparingly in the garden. Unless you've done a soil test and it specifically says that you're low on calcium or magnesium, you shouldn't be using any of these products. Just normal compost, fertilizer, and if you can, worm castings. Now I did a whole video on fertilizers. I'll link to that below as well. So that is my list of myths. You shouldn't be doing any of these. So let's move on to the don'ts. Now these are a couple of things that you might be doing now that could make Blossom End Rot worse, and you may not be knowing it. So the first one is overusing fertilizers. Fertilizer can be very helpful, but they have a high salt concentrate. So using too much can actually lead to salinity in the soil. and salinity is one of the causes of blossom end rot. So you want to use your fertilizers sparingly. So the next one is the source of your nitrogen. Now, if you read the label of many fertilizers and you look in the section where it talks about nitrogen, it'll often say something about there's a certain percentage of it is derived from nitrate nitrogen, a certain percentage is ammonium nitrogen, and a certain percentage is derived from other sources. Now you want to avoid ammonium nitrogen. This has been found to be a cause of blossom end rot. Now stick with things that are higher in nitrate nitrogen. For example, I did a video recently on KNO3, and that is pure nitrate nitrogen. There's no ammonium nitrogen in there. So just read the label and go sparingly on the ammonium nitrogen and you'll do okay. Again, I'll link to that fertilizer video down below. Now, let's get to the do's. These are 9 things that you should be doing that can help prevent blossom end rot in the future. Now, the first one is choosing the tomato plants that you grow wisely. It is well known that Roma tomatoes are very susceptible to blossom end rot. So if you live someplace in the desert like I do, where there's big fluctuations in the temperature, for example, it can be like 40 at night and over 100 during the day, those fluctuations of temperature can really cause problems for larger tomatoes. The Romas, the big heirloom tomatoes, the beefsteak tomatoes, you want to avoid those if you're having trouble with blossom end rot. What you should be growing is smaller, medium-sized tomatoes and cherry tomatoes. I really love the black cherry tomatoes. They're my all-time favorite tomato to grow. They're easy to grow, they taste great, and they're pretty much immune to blossom end rot. So stick with the cherry tomatoes. Gardener's Delight and Sun Gold, these are some cherry tomatoes that people really love. They taste great, very easy to grow. Now the same thing goes for bell peppers. The larger the pepper, the more likely you are to have blossom end rot. So if you're having issues, plant less of those and start planting more small mini sweet peppers. Things like the lunchbox peppers and other small peppers. Those are have much less frequency of blossom end rot. Now the next one is don't panic. Now the reason I say this is it's very common for the very first set of fruit that a plant produces will have blossom end rot. If you cut it off, throw it away, and then do absolutely nothing, the second set of fruit will be fine, and so will the third, and etc. So that first set of fruit are the ones that are most likely to have blossom end rot. So that is also the reason why many of the myths that I talked about earlier seem to perpetuate themselves. People will get blossom end rot, they'll go to Facebook or Reddit and they'll ask what to do. People will tell them to add calcium or eggshells or Epsom salts or one of those silly myths, and they'll do it, and then the next set of fruit shows up and it has no blossom end rot, so they think, oh great, it worked. No, it didn't work. The same result would have happened even if you had done nothing. So just don't panic. But there are some things you can do to help prevent it. So let's keep going on our list here. The next one is even and consistent watering. Overwatering and underwatering can cause blossom end rot. So if you're not sure what's going on under your soil, you may need to dig a hole, reach down in there and see what's going on. If it's too wet, like your soil isn't draining well, or if it's too dry, you need to adjust. And when the temperature raises, you need to adjust that as well. Even and consistent watering are one of the best ways to prevent blossom end rot. Now there are even some technologies you can use. There are products that you can buy, stick them in the ground, and it'll actually send a message to your smartphone to let you know if the soil's too wet or too dry. So it really kind of takes the guesswork out of it. So if you're having problems with blossom end rot, consider one of those products. They're not that expensive, about $30 on eBay. The next one is large fluctuations of heat. Now you can't control the temperature, but there are things you can do to minimize that. The first one is once it starts getting really hot in your area, above 90, close to 100, you need to put sunshade over your tomato plants. Now, most people will recommend about 30%. If you live in the desert like I do, I really recommend going all the way up to 60%. The plants really can't handle 100-degree heat all day long. So a nice sunshade over your tomatoes. Now, for your peppers, I put everything in these containers. So I just simply pick these up, I move them closer to the house, and that way they're in the shade during the heat of the day. They still get morning sun and afternoon sun, but in the heat of the day, they're in full shade, and that will really help. The next one is airflow. So trim the bottom 6 inches of your tomato plants, trim the branches off those bottom branches, and plant them farther apart. You need a good 2 feet or 3 feet to get space so there's lots of airflow going in there. So plant things farther apart. Next thing is the mulching. Mulching is very helpful. You should never have bare dirt in your garden. I really like wood chips myself. A lot of people like straw. But wood chips is very easy. Oftentimes you can get them for free from the arborists. So just look around, maybe chipdrop.com, places like that. You can get free wood chips. And make sure they're wood chips and not the colored bark landscaping bark that you get from some of the home stores. That's not going to work. You really need real wood chips. Very helpful. The next one is if you're using containers, use felt containers. Stay away from those black plastic containers. Those absorb and attract heat and practically cook the roots during a really hot day, where the felt containers breathe much better. So stick with the felt containers. The next thing is wounding. Physical wounding to a plant can cause blossom end rot. So try to stake your plants if you're in a windy area like I am. You can see it's pretty windy today. Also, if you have pets or kids, you might want to put a fence around your garden. Keep them from being bumped into. This will help a lot. Now the next one is one that I didn't talk about in the last video, and that's soil pH. Buy yourself a soil tester from a home store, or send your soil away and pay to have a professional test the soil for you. If your pH is too high or too low, that can cause blossom end rot too. So if it is too high or too low, go online. There are plenty of ways you can find to adjust it so it'll be within the 6 to 7 mark. And the last one is one we kind of touched on before, and that is try to use nitrate nitrogen as opposed to ammonium nitrate sources. Ammonium nitrogen can cause blossom end rot. So that's my 6 myths, my 2 don'ts, and my 9 do's. Now these should go a long way to helping you prevent blossom end rot. Stay away from asking people on Reddit and Facebook. You're just going to get a lot of myths. I linked to some university studies in my last video and some scientific abstracts on the subject, so you can read those if you like, but stay away from those myths. And if you like this video, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.